He became the lamb of slaughter for the sheep that have gone astray. It's a beautiful picture of him coming to our place, coming to where we are, meeting us where we are, so that he can bring us out of where we are and take us with him to where he is. Kind of like that bridge illustration that we work with the kids. He met us and took us with him. He became the sheep that was silent before its shearers, so that he could save the sheep that had gone astray. Let's go on to verse 8. By a perversion of justice, he was taken away. Who could have imagined his future? For he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. The perversion of justice. Most Sundays on Easter, when you come to church, you will hear a reading from the Gospels. It will be something about the empty tomb. They may do something about the trial. It's something from the Gospels. I chose this from the Old Testament because it so clearly predicts 800 years before it happens the events of the crucifixion. By a perversion of justice, he was taken away. When you look at Christ's trial, what do you see? But perversion after perversion after perversion of justice. They come to him at night. Why? Because they're afraid if they go to him in the day, the people will riot because they know he's a great teacher. So they sneak up on him at night. They pay one of his own people to betray him into the hands of the guards. They take him to the high priest, at which time they interrogate him, they question him, they put him on trial, a trial whose verdict was made even before the trial, the first word of the trial began. Because it says in many chapters before, they were looking for a way to accuse him that they might have him killed. They were looking for a way to have him killed. They plotted against him to have him killed. They kept on looking. They were planning to kill him. The trial was a facade. And then, when they finished their mock trial, they blindfolded him, they beat him, they spit on him, they accused him, they slandered him, made fun of him. Does that sound like justice to you? And then they take him to the real court, and they can't even get their story straight. One saying one thing, one saying the other thing, and the guy says, well, look, there's nothing here to charge this guy. And they start screaming, and they're like, the city's going to riot. If you don't kill this guy, the city's going to riot. And the judge, who happens to be in charge of the whole region, has to do something. They force him to do something. They force him to do something with this prisoner. He says, well, I'll just beat him and let him go. They're like, no, you have to kill him. If you don't kill him, we will riot. And he comes in and he talks to Jesus, and he goes back out, he talks to the people, he comes back in, he goes back out. And this whole time he's saying, there's nothing, this guy's innocent. He says it. This guy's innocent. And then he goes forward with the execution. By perversion of justice, he was taken away. Who could have imagined his future? But he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. What happens? He dies. Let's read verse 9 together. They made his grave with the wicked, and his tomb with the rich, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth. The grave with the wicked. He was crucified between two actual criminals. He was buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy man. His grave was with the wicked. His tomb was with the rich. It is amazing how precise this prophecy is. Even though he had done no violence and there was no deceit. Deceit? Lies. There were no lies. He told the truth. Let's go on, verse 10. Yet it was the will of God to crush him with pain. When you make his life an offering for sin, he shall see his offspring and shall prolong his days. Through him the will of the Lord shall prosper. It was the will of the Lord to crush him with pain. This verse hit me hard because it sounds almost like like God wanted him to suffer. It sounds very close to that. And I had to read it several times and think about it for a long time because it really bothered me. The thought of God wanting Jesus to suffer specifically, especially the fact that he's innocent. But it says, the will of the Lord was to crush him with pain. And after studying this for quite a while, I don't think that God wanted him to suffer pain, but he wanted the consequence of the pain that he would suffer. And that pain that he would suffer, the consequence was righteousness and forgiveness for many. Because look at the next verse. When you make his life an offering for sin, you see? God wants the consequence. It is God's will that he suffers so that the consequence of his life becoming an offering for sin will be effective. He shall see his offspring and prolong his days. This is kind of a strange passage in prophecy because before Jesus, we have just read that he dies, and then we read that he will live a long life. Kind of a contradiction of terms. The dead guy is going to live a long time. It doesn't sound right. This is dissonant to our ears. How will a dead man live a long time? And there's no answer for that until we get to Easter Sunday, 2,000 years ago. He shall see his offspring. And a few verses back, in verse 8, it says, he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken. I lost it. Who could have imagined his future? Another translation of that is, who could see his children? And the implication is he doesn't have any children. This man that dies has no children. They say he dies, he's cut off from the land of the living before he has children. And then down here, it says, he shall see his offspring. Again, we hear this dissonance. It's like fingernails scratching down a chalkboard. It's getting listeners' attention. You know, may the dead man live long, and may the childless have many children. It's like, wait, what does that mean? And what we see here is Christ has no biological children, and yet everyone who becomes a believer and follower of Christ becomes his child. Christ, the man with no children, has more children than any other man in all of history, including Father Abraham, whose God says, you will not be able to count your offspring. They'll be like the sands on the shore and the stars in the sky. Jesus outdoes him with children because of his sacrifice on the cross. Let's go on to verse 11. Out of his anguish he shall see light. He shall find satisfaction through his knowledge. The righteous one, my servant, shall make many righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Do you see it? He shall make many people righteous by bearing their iniquities. He will become their offering, their sin offering, their guilt offering, and he will purify them, and they will become his children. Verse 12, together. Therefore, I will allot him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out himself to death, and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. Christ came to be with us, to be like us in all respects, except for sin. He was the lamb. He was the shepherd who became the lamb to save the sheep who had gone astray. The shepherd who became the lamb to save the sheep who were gone astray. And God says, I will give him a great portion. The greatest gift from God in the Bible to people, second to eternal life, is children. I will make his portion great. I will make his portion great because he poured out himself to death. He became like those that he came to save. He became numbered with the transgressors. He lived with us. And he bore the sins of many and made intercession for us, transgressors. So again, what power has a false accusation? In the context of our earlier discussion, false accusation hurts.